Hi, I'm Gavin,
And I'm Dave.
and you're on the fringe.
Come along with us for a ride on a podcast where we talk about an area or a thing going on in the world that needs more attention, just like you do. Let's go.
On the fringe. Here we go.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back to On the Fringe. This is Dave. I'm here with Gavin.
Hey, and today we're talking about a pretty serious subject in a part of the world that's having a lot of problems, has had a lot of problems, looks like it's going to continue to have a lot of problems.
I
Uh,
would even say you could tie this into two parts of the world because both parts of the world are basically going through different levels
the
of
ringer,
turmoil.
the ringer. They're going through the ringer. Um, so the two countries we're really referring to today, uh, Colombia and Sudan. And you're going to hear that and go, what could Colombia and Sudan have in common? Colombia, one of the larger Spanish speaking countries in the Western Hemisphere, and Sudan, North African, massive country, massive civil war, lots of problems. Uh, and it's in those problems that the connection has formed. Uh, Currently, we think there are around 300 Colombian mercenaries in the vicinity fighting in the Republic of Sudan, primarily for the Rapid Support Forces. And
Mhm. The
how
Rapid
the
Support Forces took over, it was last year, right? When they basically pushed out Bashir and Sudan
no, no, no.
ultimately or essentially underwent a coup d'etat, correct?
You're conflating things a little, Dave, which is easy to
Okay.
do because
Set me straight.
The situation in Sudan's a little confusing. So Omar Bashir was in power for, gee, I think it was about 30 years. He was there for an incredibly long time. He was pushed out uh, by a combination of the army, the Rapid Support Forces, which is a separate paramilitary organization, and protesters, Sudanese democratic protesters who took to the streets, who were shot, who were attacked, who kept going out there and eventually forced the army's hand. They deposed Bashir. There was a 2 year period where it looked like there was a transition to democracy going on. There was a transitional council. They were pushed out by the RSF working with the army. Uh, the democratic transition ended in 21. And then in 23, a civil war erupted between the RSF, headed by a guy named Hameti, that's his nom de guerre, Hameti Dagalo, and his forces, and the Sudanese armed forces led by General Burhan. And they have been slugging it out ever since. It's been it's probably the worst or close to the worst ongoing conflict uh, in the world today. It's pretty, it's up there. It's very nasty. Civilian casualties have been horrendous. Uh, War crimes on both sides. The RSF, I would say, has the worst reputation. Um, Really, really terrible. And it has drawn in other actors, other states, other interests, and
It's drawn in mercenaries as well, right?
it's drawn in mercenaries. Now, Dave, how do Colombian mercenaries get from Bogota or Medellin all the way to the front lines in Darfur. I mean, how does that begin to happen?
Well, it's a very, very long and windy connection, and not just jumping on a plane and going. It's going to take a very long time, obviously, to get there. But these Colombians are finding job advertisement online for security guards in the UAE primarily. And when they see these advertisements, they jump on them. They're primarily, protecting either people that are VIPs with a lot of money over in Dubai, or they're protecting oil infrastructure in the region. And they take one of these jobs, they work for maybe a month, maybe not even that long, and primarily they'll have an assignment to go over to Libya. So they'll go over to Libya, and once they're in Libya, they're essentially captured and they're taken down to near the border with Sudan. And there was a drone attack. This was in November, where a Colombian was killed down very close to the border in southeastern Libya. And they found his identity documents, and they basically figured out that he was down there based on his not his Instagram, his TikTok postings.
Yeah.
So just like what we were talking about in another episode, you leave a digital footprint, you're able to be found by virtually anybody. And this guy posting TikToks, Bellingcat was able to see that this guy was in southern Libya. He was here at this point. He was here at this time of day. And they could basically trace everywhere that he went within Libya until his last post. And then after they found the documents, and they assumed that, well, he's either been captured or he's been killed, or he has been basically not able to fight anymore, or lost his ability to post things online, but very likely captured or killed.
Now, Colombian mercenaries have a reputation, and part of that just has to do with the fact that Colombia has had a long history of political violence, has a very large armed forces, um, has gone through sort of periods of wax and wane in terms of political violence. So you will have a lot of veterans. The Colombian army doesn't pay very well, generally speaking. So you'll have people with combat experience who are maybe relatively well trained in counterinsurgency, who know how to fight in adverse conditions, and who are willing to work for not that much money. So there was originally a pipeline, primarily through American companies working out of the UAE, that were sending Colombians into Yemen and then Libya. And now it looks like they're extending that into Sudan. Um, and I think it's more of a sign of how desperate the conflict has gotten that people are willing to go to some lengths to basically entrap these guys and ship them to Sudan all the way from Colombia. I mean, it's kind of incredible when you think about it, and pretty horrific if you're in that situation or if you have family who are in that situation. And the Colombian government is aware of this. They're trying to put a stop to it. Uh, I would say they'll probably have partial success, but kind of like the outflow of Nepalis and Indians to the front lines in Donbass, uh, where there are desperate people who need work, you're gonna find people heading out there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I guess where there's demand, there's going to be a supply.
Yep. Well, and just to add to that, so Colombia's economy, and Colombia has been handling the arrival of millions of Venezuelans that have been coming over in the last 8 to 10 years. And between 2017 and 2018, over 1 million Venezuelans went to Colombia. By August 2023, over 2 million of them had gained legal status in the country, so they had the ability to work. And if you're bringing in 2 million people, and a lot of them are younger males, they're going to be fighting and competing for jobs. So you have an increase in people coming in to Colombia. It's going to drive wages and salaries down because these people are going to be willing to work for less money. And it's going to be harder and harder for these Colombian soldiers and former Colombian soldiers to get jobs to feed their families. So they're taking more desperate measures, like going over to the UAE to work as a security guard, when in fact they're not actually doing that. They're being brought to Sudan, or they're being brought to a different area essentially as a kidnapped person, as a kidnapped person.
Yeah. And this is a pretty sad situation. But it's definitely, again, it's sort of the manifestation of the inequalities of the global economy. If you have people with the experience, and if you have people who are desperate because of whatever the domestic economic situation might be, this is going to happen more and more frequently. This is not a one-off where you go, wow, Colombians are in Sudan or Nepalis are in Ukraine. Uh, as these civil wars, domestic conflicts become more and more intertwined, this sort of poaching of mercenaries from faraway locales is going to become more and more common. I
Especially
sense
if they're well trained.
especially if they're well trained. And of course, Nepal and Colombia both have, in Nepal's case, it has pretty much stopped, but they both have long running civil wars. And consequently, you had a surplus of people with combat experience, uh, with very helpful combat experience. And yeah, this is, and again, as these conflicts go on, Syrian mercenaries, Libyan mercenaries, these are very much going to be a thing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess we're speculating here, but I mean, where would you see this in the next couple of years? Do you think this is just going to continue, where you're going to have more people that have combat experience, or people that are military or former military, joining in some of these conflicts in far off regions? Or, I mean, Colombia's essentially tried to put in a ban on having mercenaries leave the country to go and fight, but I don't know if that's really going to work, because you're essentially going to have people, okay, they can leave Colombia, go to another country, and then they can fly from that other country to another region and potentially fight or take a different job and use their skills and use their combat experience,
I
for
mean,
good or for bad.
exactly. I think there's more and more an awareness of this issue, but without a solid international framework that I think would involve more cooperation than some countries are comfortable with at this point in history, it's not going to happen. It's like sticking your fingers in a dam. You're not really going to solve the problem. It Another interesting juxtaposition, which we'll probably talk about in a different context later on. Uh, in the latter part of last year, I was made aware that there were several hundred Romanian mercenaries operating in the east of Congo, a lot of whom had French Legion experience. Um, you know, that has become a political issue in Romania because a lot of those guys went back and were organizing against the government because now they have a lot of combat experience because they're in the east of Congo. So that that becomes a major domestic issue, but internationally it's like you said, unless there's really high level cooperation, Romanian authorities can't control what a Romanian citizen does when they're spending most of the year in France. If they want to go off and work for the Congolese government, how are you going to know that? How are you going to monitor that? Uh, and I think, as a conflict in Syria seems to be maybe solidifying to some degree, yeah, you're gonna have a lot of guys out there in need of money with experience, and this is not going away.
Yeah,
And
well,
you,
and too, if the Ukraine conflict winds
yeah,
down in the next 6 months to a year, you're going to have a huge influx of
yep.
soldiers plus of cheap technology that is basically going to be bought, I would think, for next to nothing, and they're going to basically take it and put it into either battle or put it into some situation where it can be utilized.
Well, I read an article about a year ago where it was basically like the worst. I mean, again, peace is good. Let's hope peace comes swiftly. But one of the worst things that could happen to large parts of Africa right now would be a cessation of conflict in the Ukraine, because you would essentially free up a labor force on the Ukrainian and the Russian side. I mean, on both sides you have this, definitely more on the Russian, but the Ukrainians have a PMC presence in sub-Saharan Africa as well. And actually, Ukraine has a presence in Sudan. There's a lot of cooperation with the Sudanese armed forces. Um, you would have an influx of guys looking for work, and it would negatively impact peace in the region. I would say in a pretty profound way.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, I even think as well, you're going to have supply chains potentially for the whole entire world affected as well.
yeah,
Where if you have increased conflict over in the eastern part of the Congo, and you
yeah,
have a supply of cobalt that is basically trickling and trickling and trickling, and it gets essentially cut off,
and
then
it's going to get cut off. And I mean,
yeah,
this,
then you have a huge problem that the whole entire world is going to have to deal with, and it's
and
likely
this
not going to get solved.
no, and this is a subject for another
Hmm.
podcast.
We're kind of going off the rails on the fringe,
We're
but
going off the rails. We're going on the fringe. Uh, but yeah, we need to talk about Eastern Congo. That's a whole nother kettle of fish. Anyways, uh, PMCs, private military companies, flows of mercenaries, entrapment of people with combat experience. These are issues that are not going away. And these are issues that I pretty firmly believe can only be solved with more profound international cooperation on this issue. And unfortunately, I've just not seen it. But,
hmm
yeah,
especially in the places where these issues need to be solved.
yeah, yeah. And again, as you could say with a lot of problems, a lot of the issue is that there are just too many people making money off of this human suffering. And you hope you see a more robust international action against this sort of thing. And I guess that's what I'd like to end with, is just I hope more action is taken on getting these vets jobs in countries like Colombia and Nepal, and that more is being done to protect them from winding up in these really horrendous situations.
Right. And also on the topic of vet, you have to vet every single job that you see. If you're looking for work in a different country, make sure you vet the organization, spend some time and try to find people that either work there and investigate whether this is a real company or it is, total BS. Because if you get yourself locked into a situation like that, you're never going to get out. It's going to be nearly impossible to.
So
And
stay safe, stay aware, check your surroundings.
with that, thank you for listening. Like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll be back with another episode soon. Take care.